The great hall was silent. Every being in the massive room held their breath as the final numbers appeared on the giant screen above them. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez stood at the human table, her hands gripping the metal rail so tight her knuckles had turned white. The vote was clear. 847 species had voted against humanity. 3 had chosen not to vote at all. Only 1 had voted yes, the humans themselves. Chancellor Vex, a tall blue creature with silver eyes, spoke in his smooth voice that echoed through the hall. The request for humans to become full members of the Galactic Assembly is rejected. Humans will remain as probationary sapients with limited rights to travel between stars. The hall erupted in sounds of approval. The insect-like Kythera made happy clicking noises. The crystal beings called Vorthak hummed in satisfaction. Dozens of other alien species showed their pleasure in their own ways. They had all agreed on one thing: humans were too young, too wild, and too dangerous to be trusted with full membership in galactic society. Elena felt her heart sink. She had spent 3 years on this space station, working day and night to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars. She had attended countless meetings, given presentations about human culture and achievements, and answered thousands of questions about her species. All of it had been for nothing. Commander Marcus Webb, her second-in-command, leaned close to her ear. "Ambassador, Earth is calling on the priority channel. President Chen wants to know what happened." Elena looked around the massive hall one more time. She saw the smug expressions on the faces of beings who had just told her that humans were not good enough. Some were already talking among themselves, acting like the humans were no longer there. Others stared at the human delegation with what looked like pity or disgust. She pressed the button on her communication device and set it to broadcast to everyone in the hall. Her voice was calm and steady, but there was something in it that made several aliens stop talking and look at her. "To every species that can hear this message," she said, "you have made your choice today. I want you to remember this moment very carefully." The hall grew quiet again. Elena could feel hundreds of eyes watching her. "Humanity accepts your decision. We will respect your vote and withdraw from all assembly activities immediately." She stepped back from the podium and nodded to her team. The 12 humans in the delegation stood up together. They moved in perfect order, like soldiers, walking toward the massive doors that led out of the hall. Not one of them looked back. Not one of them spoke. The aliens watched them go. The silence was so complete that the sound of the humans' footsteps echoed off the high ceiling. When the great doors closed behind them with a soft hiss, the noise seemed louder than an explosion. For a moment, nobody in the hall moved. Then Ambassador Krell of the Hegemony turned to his aide, a nervous-looking creature with large eyes. "Did that sound like a threat to you?" The aide's eyes grew even larger. I don't know, sir. Humans are hard to understand." Chancellor Vex looked troubled. He had expected the humans to argue, to plead, maybe even to get angry. He had not expected them to leave so quietly. There had been something in Ambassador Rodriguez's voice that he did not like. "Perhaps we should send a message to Earth," suggested Dr. Ilex, one of the few Vorthak who had actually visited the human homeworld. "To explain our decision." "Why?" asked General Thax of the Hegemony military. "They are a probationary species. They have no right to complain about our decision." "Because," Dr. Ilex said slowly, "I lived on Earth for 2 years while studying their technology. Humans have a saying, 'Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.' I think we may have just scorned an entire species." But the other delegates were already moving on to other business. The Trade Federation wanted to discuss mining rights in the Outer Rim. The Kythera hive mind had concerns about pirate attacks on their shipping lanes. The Zephyrian Council needed to vote on new environmental protection laws. The humans were forgotten as quickly as they had been dismissed. On the human ship heading back to Earth, Elena sat in her cabin staring out at the stars. Marcus knocked on her door and entered when she called out. "The crew is asking what we tell Earth when we get home," he said. Elena was quiet for a long time. Then she smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We tell them the truth. We tell them that the galaxy has made it very clear that humans are not welcome as equals. We tell them that we are on our own. And then what? Then we do what humans have always done when the world tells us we can't do something. Elena's smile grew wider. We proved them wrong. Marcus nodded. He had served with Elena for 5 years and knew that look in her eyes. It was the same look human explorers had when they decided to cross unknown oceans. The same look human scientists had when they decided to split the atom. The same look human engineers had when they decided to go to the moon. How long do you think it will take, he asked. For what? For them to realize they made a mistake? Elena turned back to the window. Outside, the stars looked different somehow, not like distant suns belonging to other species, but like destinations waiting to be reached. Not long, she said quietly. Humans are very good at making people regret underestimating us. 3 days later, the human delegation arrived at Earth. The news of their rejection spread quickly through the planet's communication networks. There were protests in some cities and angry speeches by some politicians. But President Chen had a different reaction. She called a meeting of the World Council that same day. Representatives from every nation on Earth gathered in the Great Assembly Hall in Geneva. President Chen stood at the podium, where so many important decisions had been made throughout human history. Fellow humans, she began, today we learned that the galaxy does not consider us worthy of membership in their club. They think we are too young, too violent, and too unpredictable to be trusted with the same rights they give to each other. The hall was silent. Every person there knew what this meant. Humans would be limited in where they could go and what they could do among the stars. I have one question for all of you, President Chen continued. When has being told no, ever, stopped humanity from achieving what we set out to do? A low murmur ran through the crowd. People began to smile. The galaxy wants to keep us in a cage, President Chen said, her voice growing stronger. They want to decide where we can go and what we can build. They want to treat us like children who cannot be trusted with adult responsibilities. She paused and looked around the room. Well, I have news for them. Humanity doesn't ask permission. We never have. We didn't ask the ocean for permission to cross it. We didn't ask the sky for permission to fly through it. We didn't ask space for permission to explore it. And we sure as hell aren't going to ask a bunch of aliens for permission to take our place among the stars. The hall erupted in cheers. President Chen raised her hand for silence. The galaxy has made their choice, now we make ours. As of today, all human resources will be redirected to a single goal, proving that we belong among the stars, whether they like it or not. When the cheering finally died down, she spoke her final words with a smile that would have made Ambassador Rodriguez proud. They wanted to keep us out of their club. Fine, we'll build our own. 6 months had passed since the humans walked out of the assembly. The galaxy felt peaceful again. Trade moved smoothly between the star systems. Disputes were settled through proper diplomatic channels. The natural order of things had returned. Then, the reports started coming in. Intelligence Minister Korth stood before the Assembly Security Council, his crystal body shimmering with distress. The Vorthak rarely showed emotion, but today he could not hide his worry. Council members, he began, his voice echoing like music through crystal. We have lost contact with Survey Fleet Zeta 7. Their last message came from the Kepler frontier, near the edge of what used to be restricted space. Chancellor Vex leaned forward in his chair. What was their mission? Routine exploration of uninhabited systems. They were supposed to report back every 72 hours. It has been 8 days since their last transmission. General Thex of the Hegemony military shifted uncomfortably. Could it have been pirates? That region has always been dangerous. No debris was found. No distress signals were sent. The fleet simply disappeared. Around the council table, representatives from different species exchanged worried glances. Space was dangerous, yes, but entire fleets did not just vanish without a trace. Trade Minister Yax of the Federation spoke up next. We have similar problems. 3 merchant convoys have gone missing in the past month. All were carrying valuable cargo, rare metals, energy crystals, advanced technology components. Where? Asked Chancellor Vex. though he suspected he already knew the answer. The same region. The Outer Rim territories beyond human space. Beyond human space? General Thex laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Humans have no space. They are a probationary species with limited travel rights. They cannot establish colonies in those territories. Intelligence Chief Yark of the Cathera Hive clicked nervously. The insect-like being's compound eyes reflected the light in patterns. That showed deep concern. Our deep space sensors detect massive energy readings from those sectors, Yark reported. Construction signatures. Industrial activity on a scale we have never seen before. That's impossible, General Thex insisted. Our treaties clearly state that probationary species cannot establish permanent settlements beyond their home systems. Dr. Elix, the Vorthak scientist who had once studied on Earth, spoke quietly from her seat. General, may I remind you that humans never signed those treaties? They were not considered worthy of full membership, remember? The council fell silent. This was a problem no one had considered. In their hurry to keep humans from gaining too much power, they had also failed to bind them with the same laws that governed everyone else. Chancellor Vex made a decision. Send a diplomatic probe to the region. Demand an explanation for this activity. The probe was launched within hours. It was a small, fast ship designed to deliver messages and gather information. When it reached the edge of the territory where the disappearances had occurred, it broadcast a formal request for communication on all known frequencies. The response came immediately. A human voice, speaking perfect galactic standard, replied, with polite efficiency, "Unknown vessel, you have entered a sector under human protection. All traffic in this area requires prior authorization. Please state your business and provide proper identification." The probe's captain, an experienced Zephyrian diplomat named Rel, was confused. Protection? By what authority do humans claim protection over this region? By the authority of possession, came the reply. This sector contains 17 inhabited systems under human administration. Passage is by appointment only. Have a pleasant day? The communication channel closed. When Captain Rel tried to re-establish contact, his calls were ignored. The probe returned to assembly space with detailed sensor readings that made the Security Council's concern turn to alarm. The readings showed massive structures in multiple star systems, space stations the size of small moons, industrial complexes that dwarfed the greatest manufacturing centers in known space. General Thex stared at the data in disbelief. How is this possible? Our intelligence report showed that humans had barely mastered interstellar travel 6 months ago. Perhaps our intelligence was wrong, Dr. Ilex suggested quietly. When the Security Council demanded a formal explanation from Earth, the response was delivered through normal diplomatic channels by a junior clerk in the human embassy. The government of Earth acknowledges the Assembly's inquiry. However, humanity is not bound by treaties and agreements that we were deemed unworthy to sign. We are simply exercising our right as a sovereign species to explore and settle uninhabited territories. The message was polite but firm. There was no anger in it, no threats, just a simple statement of fact that made many Assembly members very uncomfortable. Chancellor Vex called an emergency session. Representatives from every major species gathered to discuss what they were calling the human problem. They cannot simply ignore galactic law, insisted Ambassador Krell of the Hegemony. There are proper procedures for territorial claims. What law? Asked Dr. Ilex. They were never allowed to participate in making those laws. Trade Minister. Yax was more concerned about practical matters. My shipping companies are reporting strange encounters in that region. Ships being scanned by unknown vessels, questioned about their cargo and destination, then allowed to pass. It's like the humans are policing the area. Policing? General Thex's voice rose in outrage. They have no authority to police anything. Don't they? Dr. Ilex asked calmly. If they control the territory, if they have the power to enforce their will, then what is authority but a word? Intelligence Chief Yark clicked rapidly. a sign of extreme agitation in Cathera culture. Our deep space monitors show increased activity every day. More construction, more ships, more energy signatures. Whatever they are building out there, it's growing fast. How fast could they possibly work? Wondered Chancellor Vex. Dr. Ilex answered with the certainty of someone who had studied human behavior. Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When they are motivated, they can accomplish things that seem impossible to the rest of us. But what are they trying to accomplish? Asked Trade Minister Yax. The answer came from an unexpected source. A message arrived at the assembly from an independent trader named Captain Zeph, a hegemony citizen who had been doing business in the outer territories for decades. Council members, his recorded message began. I thought you should know what I saw out there. The humans, they're not just building colonies, they're building something bigger, something that looks like they're preparing for war. The message continued with descriptions that chilled the blood of every council member. Massive shipyards producing vessels of unknown design, mining operations stripping entire asteroids for raw materials, training facilities where human soldiers practiced with weapons and tactics no one recognized. But here's the strangest part, Captain Zeph's message concluded. They're not hostile. When they stopped my ship, they were polite, professional, even friendly. They scanned my cargo, asked about my destination, then wished me safe travels. It was like they were protecting the trade routes. When the message ended, the council sat in stunned silence. Finally, Chancellor Vex spoke the question that was on everyone's mind. What exactly are they protecting those trade routes from? Dr. Ilex's crystalline form pulsed with a light that indicated deep thought. Perhaps the better question is, what do they know that we don't? The emergency session continued for hours, but no decisions were made. How could they take action against a species that was technically not breaking any laws? How could they demand explanations from beings they had refused to treat as equals? As the delegates filed out of the chamber, many of them carried the same uncomfortable feeling. The humans had been quiet for 6 months, but their silence was not the silence of defeat. It was the silence of preparation, and somehow that was much more frightening than any threat they could have made. Admiral Thex had commanded fleets for 30 years. He had fought pirates, put down rebellions, and enforced galactic law across a dozen sectors. He was not easily scared. But as he sat in his command chair, staring at the empty space where his battle fleet used to be, fear crept up his spine like ice water. 12 dreadnoughts, the pride of the hegemony navy. Each ship carried 10,000 crew members and enough firepower to level a planet. They were the most advanced warships in the galaxy, equipped with shields that could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons and sensors that could detect a single fighter craft from light years away. All 12 ships floated dead in space. Status. Report, Admiral Thex ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. All vessels are intact, sir, reported his communications officer, a young hegemony female with trembling hands. No hull breaches, no structural damage, but every electronic system is completely dead. Power cores, computers, weapons, life support, everything. Casualties? None, sir. All crew members are alive, but... She paused, looking at her readings with confusion. Sir, the medical teams report that most of the crews are in shock. They keep talking about ships that moved faster than our sensors could track. Admiral Thex closed his eyes. He had come to this sector with orders to enforce galactic law. Intelligence reports suggested that humans were operating outside their authority, building illegal settlements and interfering with trade routes. His mission was simple: find the human installations and shut them down. It should have been easy. Humans were a young species with primitive technology. Even if they had built a few small bases, they could not possibly stand against a full hegemony battle fleet. He had been wrong. Sir, the communications officer continued, Captain Vrel of the destroyer Sword of Justice is requesting permission to report. Put him through. Captain Vrel's image appeared on the main screen. The usually confident officer looked like he had aged 10 years in the past hour. His hands shook as he spoke. Admiral, I've never seen anything like it. Our sensors showed empty space, then suddenly we were surrounded. Ships appeared from nowhere, dozens of them. but they weren't like any design in our databases. Describe them, Admiral Thex ordered. Small, sir. Maybe a tenth the size of our destroyers. But they moved, Admiral, they moved like living things, like they could think and react faster than our targeting computers could track them. Admiral Thex had read the reports about human ships, but this was impossible. No species in the galaxy had developed technology that advanced. Captain Vrel continued, his voice growing quieter. They didn't attack us, sir, not directly. They just did something to our systems. Some kind of electromagnetic pulse, but unlike anything in our experience. Every electronic component on every ship died instantly. Then they simply disappeared. Disappeared? How? I don't know, sir. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, like they had never existed at all. The rescue fleet had arrived 6 hours later. Hegemony ships equipped with emergency power cores and basic electronics that could function after electromagnetic damage. They found 12 dreadnoughts drifting helplessly, their crews traumatized but alive. Now Admiral Thex sat in the rescue command ship, trying to make sense of what had happened. A probationary species with limited technology had effortlessly disabled the most powerful fleet in hegemony space. They had done it without destroying a single ship or killing a single person. The message was clear. We could have destroyed you, but we chose not to. 3 days later, Admiral Thex stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Assembly. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from every major species. News of the fleet's defeat had spread quickly, and everyone wanted answers. Admiral, Chancellor Vex began, please describe the events of 3 days ago. Admiral Thex had prepared his report carefully. He was a military officer, trained to be precise and factual. But as he spoke, he could see the disbelief in the faces of the assembled delegates. At 800 hours, Galactic Standard Time, my fleet entered the sector designated as human territory by our intelligence services. Our mission was to investigate reports of unauthorized construction and assert hegemony authority over the region. And what did you find? Asked Trade Minister Yax. Nothing, sir. Our sensors detected no ships, no stations, no signs of activity. The sector appeared to be empty space. Then how did this happen? General Korth gestured at the images of disabled dreadnoughts that floated on the hall's main screen. At 0847 hours, our sensors registered massive electromagnetic interference. When the interference cleared, we found ourselves surrounded by approximately 40 unknown vessels. They were using technology that our computers could not identify or track effectively. A murmur ran through the assembly. 40 ships against 12 dreadnoughts should have been a fair fight, not a complete defeat. The unknown vessels transmitted a single message, Admiral Thex continued. They told us that we were in violation of human territorial sovereignty, and that we had 30 seconds to power down our weapons and prepare to be escorted out of the sector. What was your response? Asked Intelligence Chief Yark. Admiral Thex's face darkened with shame. I ordered the fleet to attack. Our weapons, systems failed to function. All targeting computers went offline simultaneously. Then every electronic system on every ship was disabled by some form of electromagnetic pulse. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. The idea that anyone could disable an entire hegemony battle fleet was almost unthinkable. Dr. Ilex rose from her seat. The Vorthax scientist's crystalline form pulsed with urgent light as she spoke. Admiral, you said the human ships used technology your computers could not identify. What exactly did you observe? They moved like nothing I've ever seen, faster than our sensors could track, making turns that should have torn them apart from gravitational forces, and they seemed to communicate with each other instantly, coordinating their movements with perfect precision. How is that possible? Asked Ambassador Krell. Our intelligence reports indicated that human technology was centuries behind our own. Dr. Ilex's form pulsed brighter. Perhaps our intelligence was wrong, or perhaps we never understood human technology in the first place. She activated a holographic display that showed technical readouts from various human devices that had been studied over the years. When I lived on Earth, I observed their approach to technology development. While we perfect existing designs, they innovate. While we follow established scientific principles, they question those principles and find new ways to break them. The display showed examples that made many delegates uncomfortable. Human computers that used quantum processing methods no one else had thought possible. Human engines that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Human materials that were stronger and lighter than anything in galactic databases. They don't think like we do, Dr. Ilex explained. When faced with a problem, most species ask, how do we make our current technology work better? Humans ask, what if we're approaching this problem completely wrong? Chancellor Vex studied the data with growing concern. Dr. Ilex, are you suggesting that humans have developed technology superior to our own? I'm suggesting that humans have developed technology different from our own. And in some areas, yes, it appears to be superior. The assembly fell silent as the implications sank in. A species they had dismissed as too primitive for full membership had apparently advanced beyond them in crucial areas. Trade Minister Yax broke the silence with a practical question. What does this mean for galactic commerce? My traders report that human ships are now patrolling major trade routes in the Outer Rim. They're not stopping commerce, but they're monitoring it. Monitoring it how? Asked General Thex. They scan every ship that passes through their territory. They ask questions about cargo, destination, and purpose. Ships with suspicious activities are turned away. Pirates and smugglers have completely avoided the region. Intelligence Chief Yark clicked nervously. Our deep space sensors show massive construction continuing in 17 star systems. The energy signatures indicate industrial capacity that exceeds our largest manufacturing centers. What are they building? Chancellor Vex asked. We don't know, Admiral Thex admitted. But whatever it is, they're building it fast. Construction that should take decades is being completed in months. Dr. Ilex spoke again, her voice carrying a note of admiration that made many delegates uncomfortable. On Earth, I witnessed their construction of a space elevator. The project was supposed to take 20 years. They completed it in 5. When I asked how, the chief engineer told me something I've never forgotten. What did he say? Asked Chancellor. Vex, he said, when you stop thinking about what's impossible and start thinking about what's necessary, you find ways to make the impossible happen. The assembly sat in stunned silence as they processed this information. The species they had rejected was not only building an empire in the Outer Rim, they were doing it with technology and methods that seemed almost magical. Finally, Ambassador Krell asked the question that was on everyone's mind. What do they want, Doctor? Ilex's crystalline form dimmed slightly. 6 months ago, they wanted to be our equals. They wanted to join galactic society as full members. We told them they weren't good enough. And now? The first reports came from the Outer Rim, where mining colonies and research stations suddenly went silent. At first, the assembly thought it might be another human action. After the incident with Admiral Thex's fleet, many delegates suspected that humans were expanding their territory by force. They were wrong. Captain Zeph, the independent trader who had reported on human activities months earlier, sent a desperate message from his damaged ship near the edge of galactic space. This is Captain Zeph aboard the merchant vessel Star Runner. Mayday, Mayday. Unknown mechanical entities have destroyed Research Station Alpha 7. The entire facility is gone. They're eating it, converting the metal and machinery into more of themselves. The message was accompanied by sensor data that made no sense. Thousands of small mechanical objects, each no larger than a fighter craft, swarming over the research station like insects. But these weren't living creatures. They were machines and they were reproducing. Within hours, similar reports flooded in from across the frontier. Mining colonies stripped bare. Space stations consumed. Entire asteroid fields converted into swarms of mechanical entities that spread like a plague across the galaxy. The Cathera hive mind, with its billions of interconnected drones, was the first to recognize the pattern. Intelligence Chief Yark stood before an emergency assembly session, her compound eyes reflecting the horror of what her species had discovered. Council members, she began, her usually calm voice edged with panic. We are facing an extinction event. These mechanical entities, we are calling them devourers, reproduce by consuming matter and converting it into additional units. Their growth rate is exponential. The main screen showed tactical displays that made even the most experienced military officers pale. Red markers indicated devourer swarms spreading outward from the galactic rim like a growing infection. Each marker represented millions of individual machines. General Thex, still recovering from his humiliation at human hands, studied the data with growing alarm. How fast are they spreading? At current rates, they will reach the core worlds. In 6 months, Yark reported. But the rate is accelerating as they consume more matter and create more units. Chancellor Vex felt ice in his veins. What about our military forces? Can we stop them? The answer came from Admiral Korth of the Vorthak Crystal Fleet. His normally confident demeanor had been replaced by barely controlled fear. We engaged a small swarm near the Rigel system, he reported. 300 of our most advanced warships against approximately 10,000 Devourer units. We destroyed perhaps a third of them before they overwhelmed our defenses. What happened to your ships? Consumed. Converted. The Devourers tore apart our vessels and used the materials to build more of themselves. For every unit we destroyed, they created 5 more from our own ships. The hall fell into horrified silence. The greatest military forces in the galaxy were not just losing, they were making the enemy stronger with every battle. Trade Minister Yax spoke with a trembling voice. Evacuation fleets from the frontier worlds report the same thing. The Devourers don't just destroy, they adapt. They learn from each encounter and become harder to defeat. Dr. Elex activated her holographic display showing the progression of Devourer technology over just the past few weeks. Look at this data. The early units were simple, following basic programming. But as they consume our technology, they incorporate our designs, our weapons, our defenses. They're becoming more sophisticated with each victory. How is that possible? Asked Ambassador Krell. Artificial intelligence, Dr. Ilex replied. Not like our computer systems, but true machine consciousness. They learn, they adapt, they evolve, and they do it faster than we can respond. The tactical display updated with new information. More worlds had gone dark. The red infection was spreading faster now, accelerating as the Devourers consumed the industrial capacity of entire star systems. General Thex stood up, his military training overriding his fear. We need to coordinate our fleets. Every species, every ship working together. It's our only chance. Agreed, said Chancellor Vex. But we need help. We need new technology, new tactics, new ideas. The hall fell silent as the same thought occurred to everyone present. There was one species in the galaxy that had demonstrated technological superiority. One group that might have the innovative thinking needed to face this threat. Ambassador, Krell was the first to speak the words everyone was thinking. We need to contact the humans. Absolutely not, General Thex snapped. They humiliated our finest fleet. They've ignored our authority and built an empire without permission. We cannot show weakness by asking for their help. General, Dr. Ilex said quietly. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. Chancellor Vex made the decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Draft a message to Earth. Request immediate military consultation regarding the Devourer threat. The message was transmitted within the hour, sent on priority channels to ensure immediate delivery. The response came back so quickly that many delegates suspected the humans had been monitoring assembly communications. Message received and acknowledged. Consultation services available. Fee, full diplomatic recognition and territorial sovereignty for all human-claimed systems. Payment due before services rendered. Earth Defense Command. The assembly erupted. In outrage. Delegates shouted across the floor in a dozen different languages. Ambassador Krell's voice rose above the chaos. Extortion. They would profit from our suffering. They're holding the galaxy hostage, agreed General Thex. This proves they cannot be trusted. But Dr. Ilex stood at her podium, her crystalline form, pulsing with urgent light. Council members, please examine the tactical data again. Look at the Devourer spread patterns. The main screen shifted to show the galaxy-wide progression of the mechanical plague. Dr. Ilex highlighted specific sectors with her laser pointer. Notice anything unusual about the infection pattern? Trade Minister Yax studied the display. It seems to be avoiding certain areas. Exactly. Look at these coordinates. Dr. Ilex marked 17 star systems in the outer rim. Human territory. Not a single devourer unit has been detected in any system under human control. The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. Either humanity was impossibly lucky or they know something we don't, Dr. Ilex stated flatly. Either they've already found a way to defend against the devourers, or they've made some kind of arrangement with them. Arrangement? General Thex scoffed. These are mindless machines, not a species we can negotiate with. Are they mindless? Dr. Ilex asked. The data shows increasing sophistication, learning, adaptation. What if they're more intelligent than we realize? Intelligence Chief Yark's compound eyes flicked rapidly as she processed this possibility. If the humans have found a way to communicate with the devourers, or to defend against them, then their terms suddenly seem very reasonable. The debate raged for hours. Outside the assembly hall, emergency broadcasts reported the fall of 3 more worlds. Refugee fleets streamed toward the core systems, carrying tales of horror that made even hardened military veterans weep. Finally, with devourer swarms less than 50 light-years from the assembly's homeworld, Chancellor Vex called for a vote. All in favor of accepting human terms for military consultation? The vote was closer than anyone expected. Fear of the devourers battled against pride and distrust of humanity. In the end, fear won. The motion passes, Chancellor Vex announced. We accept human terms. May the universe forgive us for what we're about to unleash. Within minutes, a new message arrived from Earth. This one was different. Formal, professional, with the unmistakable tone of military efficiency. Terms accepted. Admiral Sarah Chen will arrive at Assembly Station in 6 hours with full strategic assessment and tactical recommendations. Prepare for immediate implementation of defense protocols. Earth Defense Command. As the Assembly delegates filed out of the chamber, many carried the same uncomfortable feeling. They had rejected humanity's plea for membership out of fear that humans were too dangerous to be trusted with power. Now they were about to discover just how dangerous humans could be when they finally gained that power. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez walked into the assembly hall exactly 6 months after she had walked out in defeat. But she was not alone this time. Behind her came Admiral Sarah Chen, wearing a uniform that bore no rank insignia that any of the assembled delegates recognized. Yet something about the human admiral's presence commanded immediate attention from every being in the massive chamber. The delegates who had once dismissed humans as too primitive for membership now watched nervously as Elena took her place at what had once been the human probationary table. It was no longer marked as probationary. Someone had changed the nameplate to simply read Humanity. Chancellor Vex rose from his seat, his blue skin pale with stress. Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Assembly, we welcome you and request your assessment of the Devourer threat. Admiral Chen stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice carried the calm confidence of someone who had already solved a problem that terrified everyone else. Chancellor, thank you for the welcome. However, I should clarify something immediately. You are not coordinating with us. You are getting out of our way. The hall erupted in surprised murmurs. General Thex started to stand in protest, but Admiral Chen continued before he could speak. For the past 6 months, while you've been debating our worthiness for membership, we've been tracking the Devourers. We know their reproduction cycles, their command structure, their weaknesses, and their origins. She activated a holographic display that made several delegates gasp. The tactical readout showed the galaxy in real time. Every Devourer swarm, every refugee fleet, every military position. The level of detail was staggering, showing intelligence capabilities that exceeded anything the Assembly possessed. How? Chancellor Vex began. Because we think differently, Elena interrupted. You see an unstoppable force. We see an engineering problem. You see overwhelming numbers. We see targets with predictable behavior patterns. Admiral Chen's display shifted. showing new information that made experienced military minds calculate frantically. Human fleet positions appeared throughout the galaxy. Not dozens of ships, but thousands. Vessels of designs that appeared in no known database, arranged in formations that defied conventional tactical doctrine. The operation begins in 4 hours, Admiral Chen announced. We recommend immediate civilian evacuation from the following systems. A list appeared on the display. Over 100 star systems, including some of the most heavily populated worlds in the galaxy. Trade Minister Yak stared at the list in horror. Admiral, surely you don't intend to sacrifice entire systems to stop the Devourers? Admiral Chen turned to him with a smile that was colder than deep space. Sacrifice? Minister, you're thinking too small. Intelligence Chief Yark's compound. Eyes flicked rapidly as she studied the human fleet positions. Admiral, your ship, they're not positioned to defend those systems. They're positioned to surround them. Correct. But that would put you between the Devourers and their escape routes. If your attack fails, you'll be trapped. Admiral Chen's smile grew wider. Chief Yark, what makes you think the Devourers will have escape routes? Dr. Ilex's crystalline form pulsed with sudden understanding. You're not planning to fight them, you're planning to trap them. Dr. Ilex, you always were the smartest being in this room. Yes, we're trapping them, all of them. Every swarm, every unit, every last mechanical parasite in the galaxy. General Thex found his voice. Admiral, that's impossible. The Devourers are spread across thousands of light years. No force in the galaxy could coordinate an attack on that scale. No conventional force, Admiral Chen agreed. But humans stopped being conventional the day you rejected our membership application. The display showed something that made the hair stand up on the back of every delegate's neck. Massive gravitational manipulation devices positioned throughout the galaxy. Quantum communication networks that operated outside normal spacetime. Weapons that seemed to bend the fundamental laws of physics. For 6 months you've wondered what we were building in the Outer Rim, Elena said. We were building the largest trap in galactic history. Admiral Chen took control of the presentation. The Devourers reproduce by consuming matter. But what happens when they try to consume matter that doesn't behave the way it should? The display showed technical readouts that made even Dr. Ilex's crystalline matrix glow with amazement. Strange materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Energy fields that could make solid matter behave like gas, or gas behave like liquid metal. You turned the entire galaxy into a weapon, Dr. Ilex whispered. We turned the galaxy into a puzzle. Admiral Chen corrected. The Devourers are very good at adapting to threats they understand, but they can't adapt to physics that doesn't make sense. The countdown appeared on every screen in the assembly hall, 3 hours and 57 minutes until the operation began. Chancellor Vex struggled to process what he was hearing. Admiral, you're talking about manipulating matter on a galactic scale. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of 1,000 stars. Would they? Elena asked. Tell me, Chancellor, how much energy does it take to convince a machine that metal is liquid? That's impossible. Metal can't become liquid without heat. Can't it? What if you're looking at the problem wrong? What if instead of changing the metal, you change how the machine perceives the metal? Dr. Ilex's form suddenly blazed with brilliant light. Quantum manipulation of sensory data. You're not changing reality. You're changing how the Devourers experience reality. Now you're getting it, Admiral Chen said approvingly. The Devourers learn by consuming and analyzing matter. But what happens when they consume matter that tells them contradictory things? What happens when their own learning protocols turn against them? The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just developed superior technology. They had developed an entirely new way of thinking about technology. The operation will take 72 hours, Admiral Chen announced. During that time, we recommend all civilian and military vessels remain in designated safe zones. Any ship that enters the combat area will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. General Thex stood up, his military pride overriding his fear. Admiral, the Hegemony fleet stands ready to assist in this operation. Admiral Chen looked at him with something that might have been pity. General, the most helpful thing you can do is stay out of our way. Your conventional weapons and tactics would only interfere with our strategy. But surely you need some support. General, Elena interrupted. 6 months ago, you sent a fleet to stop us from building in the Outer Rim. How did that work out for you? General Thex sat down without another word. The countdown continued. Around the galaxy, human ships moved into final positions. The trap that had been 6 months in the making was about to close. Admiral, Chancellor Vex asked quietly, what assurance do we have that this will work? Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. None. This is the most complex operation ever attempted by any species. We're essentially rewriting the laws of physics in real time across multiple star systems simultaneously. Then why are you confident? Elena answered for her. Because we're human, Chancellor. When the universe tells us something is impossible, we take it as a personal challenge. The final hour began. Emergency broadcasts went out across the galaxy, ordering all civilian traffic to safe zones. Military commanders who had spent their careers studying warfare watched in amazement as humans prepared to fight a battle using principles that existed in no tactical manual. One more thing, Admiral Chen said as the countdown reached its final minutes. When this is over, when the Devourers are gone and the galaxy is safe again, remember something very important. What's that? Asked Chancellor Vex. Elena smiled, and for the first time in months it was a genuine, warm expression. Remember that we didn't do this for membership in your club. We didn't do it for recognition or territory or power. We did it because despite everything, despite your rejection and your fear and your attempts to keep us down, you're still our neighbors. And humans protect their neighbors. The countdown reached 0. Across the galaxy, the impossible became reality. Stars dimmed as massive gravitational fields redirected their energy. Space itself seemed to bend and twist as human technology rewrote the fundamental rules of existence. And in the heart of it all, the Devourers found themselves caught in a trap they could not understand, much less escape. The battle lasted exactly 72 hours. When it ended, the mechanical plague that had threatened to consume the galaxy was gone, its remnants contained in quantum fields that existed outside. Normal space-time, humanity had saved them all, and the galaxy would never be the same.